Welcome to Happily Ever After is just the beginning. Keeping your relationship not just together, but happy, and we mean truly happy, is part art and part science. You've come to the right place. Here's your host, Leslie Dories.
Authenticity is all the rage right now. But is that really what people want? Yes, you probably want the ability to be who you are, but do those around you want you to be who you are? Do you want to grant that ability to others, this same freedom that you want for yourself? And what about society as a whole? Those rules and roles have lasted for a really long time, and they've lasted for a reason. So I bring this up because there are calls for changes in so many aspects of society today. But change brings anxiety and what we in the business call pushback. The old order may not be working, but what replaces it can be really scary. And a good example of this is what it means to be a man. There are lots of studies that show adhering to the extreme traditional view of masculinity is physically harmful for both men and women, and as well as it's being emotionally stifling. So what options are out there that are available to men? So to take a deeper dive into this important topic, I'm joined by writer, speaker, and self-described heroism advocate, Anthony Simeone. So Anthony, thank you so much for being on the show and talking about what I think is a really timely and important topic.
Yeah, thank you very much for having me on, Leslie. I can't wait to dive into the details with you. I appreciate that.
Yeah, this is going to be an exciting topic. So you wrote in an article that if men keep suppressing their full range of emotions and ignoring the science behind their behavior, life will continue to end badly for many of them. And I sort of alluded to something in the intro about this, but what did you mean by this?
Well, many men of my generation, Generation X, and the older generations were raised in what I call the cult of machismo. Mm-hmm. You can call it the alpha male mentality as well. So these behaviors, this set of behaviors allowed by this cult of masculinity are very limited in scope if you want to be an alpha male. So it's sort of a stereotype of how you're not supposed to show weakness, you're not supposed to show your emotions, you're supposed to be stoic. You need to be intimidating towards other men because they're your competition in life. So it's this stereotype of the man's man, the guys who are tough, aloof, never seem weak, all the aspects of romanticized by Hollywood, pop culture. So it's the narrative of the tough guy. So a lot of times people call this hegemonic masculinity, toxic masculinity, but I try to steer clear from those terms because they've gotten such a negative connotation. So manhood is not toxic. Let's be clear about that.
Oh, absolutely not. I'm a big fan of men.
Yeah, well, it's same here. I have a vested interest in men not being toxic. But I mean, so there's this set of behaviors that amount to us stifling our ability to show emotions, especially things like sadness or depression, and it's a huge problem for men's mental and emotional well-being. So men channel their sadness into anger very much, and which is very destructive to themselves and others. And like you said in your intro, it can become emotionally destructive, physically destructive, and abusive to themselves and to others, to women and other men. So I truly believe that the suppression of our full emotional range is restricting our ability to be vulnerable and asking for help. And this rhetoric of hyper-individualism and hyper-competition is driving men to suffer from depression. We have a disturbing rate of committing suicide. And to be honest, I think it's a root cause of a lot of the mass shootings that are happening. We're basically committing self-imposed exile, and as social creatures evolved to be social to survive. When we're exiling ourselves, we're ostracizing ourselves from human connection, it causes aberrant behavior. So the science I was referring to in the article I wrote was about the mammalian brain and our negativity bias that stems from that. So it's our instinctual fight or flight response that gives us this strong negativity bias, and that helped our ancestors get away from the saber-toothed tigers and other dangers. But today in this modern world, we have this old brain in a new world where we don't have those dangers anymore, but we still have that negativity bias, and it kind of gets keyed up by television and 24-hour news cycle. Mm-hmm. And for men, this manifests very often as fight rather than flight. thanks to how we're socialized. If we're scared, we're supposed to strike back. We're supposed to fight it. We're supposed to get angry. So we defer to fight because that's what we're told to do. And if we don't train ourselves to be aware, and we can, disciplines like positive psychology now, especially, which I'm really into, we are teaching ourselves. We can teach ourselves to be aware of our biological psychology, and we're going to have to be aware and mindful of that, so we're not ruled by the whims of our monkey mind anymore, that mammalian brain. So we want to be we're being reactive too much as men, and we want to be reflective. But it takes some work.
Well, and it does, and it's interesting that you talk about how men, because men are traditionally kind of allowed. Anger is the one emotion that they're really allowed, and when you can't access, when you shut down certain emotions, you really actually shut them all down. And I think this is what people don't understand. You can't selectively shut down. So a lot of times when guys are asked what they're feeling, they really don't know because they've never been allowed to feel it. I mean, from the time they're little kids, and drives me crazy. It's like you tell a little kid to, man up, or one of the worst things I ever hear is if, say their dad goes off, their dad might be in the military and their dad goes off to service, and somebody says, well, now to a 5-year-old little boy, well, now you're the man of the family. It's like, oh my gosh, please don't put that pressure on that child.
Yeah,
and then
exactly.
and then they take on these things, and it's, I talk about in times where we all get sometimes our fear talked out of us. I always would tell my kids, it's like, if you ever feel uncomfortable, just let me know. I'm not going to make you go give Aunt Susie a hug if you don't want to give Aunt Susie a hug, because they're picking up something that I don't know. But we train this stuff out of them, and we train normal, everyday emotions out of men, out of boys, actually. And so then is it any surprise when they're men, they don't know what those are?
Right. They've never been allowed to self-analyze. They've never been allowed to self-reflect. It's, here's your options. You either, if you can't fight it, or, fornicate with it, for lack of a better term. I mean, it's, not to be blunt or crass, but I mean, again, yes, you're given these limited set of behaviors as men, in all seriousness. And yeah, when you don't have any other options and you're not allowed by the rules of society to analyze yourself on a deeper basis, and you're just sort of this id walking around, it's, what do you expect men to do? Then lash out in anger and confusion and fear. And like I said, when men feel fear, they decide to get angry, because that's the only path allowed to them.
Right. And that's and to hold them accountable for that, to me, is just completely unfair. I think the solution is to seriously invite them into this self-exploration. But, of course, that has to be completely safe for them, which is another topic that hopefully we'll get to. But you wrote an article recently called Don't Be a Snowflake, and I love that. And you define a snowflake as someone who is afraid of their feelings. And I'm going to be honest, this isn't limited just to men, but traditionally they're the ones, as we were talking about, who are restricted in being able to express emotions. So what are some of the qualities of a snowflake as you define it?
Well, I have to be honest. I use that term because it is sort of inflammatory. It's sort of a term that's being thrown around today. But what I wanted to do is I wanted to take it, because it's been used by alpha male culture right now to deride men who do allow themselves to feel their feelings, who do allow themselves to freely express, and who don't want to be limited by that alpha male stereotype and be lumped into that alpha male culture. So I wanted to take that term, that it's a derogatory term, and I wanted to flip it back and challenge men in that alpha male, tough guy, cult of machismo mindset, and say, really, if you think about it, you in the alpha male culture and the alpha male mindset, you're the snowflakes. Because why are you afraid of emotions? I wanted to turn the tables on them. To me, a snowflake is someone who is afraid of their feelings. So this loyalty to what I call the cult of machismo means strict adherence to that artificially narrow set of emotional expression, mostly just anger, disdain for others, suspicion, things like that. So the stress of walking that tightrope is killing men, and we don't even know it. I mean, that's what's driving us to all these extremes of behavior, including suicide and violence. So it's actually braver to accept your emotions and express them freely. So if you're doing that, you're not a snowflake if you're expressing yourself freely. There's nothing brave about avoiding or suppressing your emotions. Running away from something is not brave. So it's this mental doublespeak, this mental dichotomy that men in this alpha male community they're just not getting. They're really kind of, I feel like, limiting themselves. And so they're the snowflakes. So also a snowflake is someone who thinks showing vulnerability is weakness. A real man knows it's okay to ask for help and to say, look, I need help. I don't have all the answers in life. I need help. But the thing is, men
it's admitting that you're a human being.
Exactly, but men aren't allowed to do that. We're supposed to be these alpha male, always have the answer. We always have a play. We always have, we're always strong and we're always tough guy, and we can't, and when you're not, there's something wrong with you. So according to their perception. And also I think that there's this fragile masculinity, so a snowflake is someone who gets angriest over the tiniest perceived slights, but I think men have been socialized to have a hair-trigger temper. Don't dare slight me. Don't diss me.
Yeah, I bump up against you, and it's like, okay, yeah, it's like, really? It's like, that's going to get me shot? I mean, it's like, it's ridiculous.
Right, and you really think about it, they're not tough. There's the difference between tough and strong. So if you're tough, you're really brittle. If something's tough, it's brittle, like cracked glass. So really, to be strong is to be in touch with your emotions and to know that you are allowed to express being human. Like you said, allowing yourself being human is to be strong in a world that can take advantage of our vulnerability. It is scary, but you're strong. You're not a snowflake if you accept that that you will choose to be vulnerable despite the dangers of the world around you and the cruelty that can sometimes happen in the world around you.
Right, because my view of vulnerability, and when I heard Brene Brown's TED Talk about it, I felt like, oh my gosh, I'm not crazy. I've thought this for a long time. Is that because when you're vulnerable, you're going to get hurt, but it's okay. You're willing to take the risk. Yes,
and that's the heroic journey of life. I mean, I'm really big into the hero's journey, and we'll get to that in a little bit. But, I mean, that's really what the mythology of the hero's journey is, what it was created for by our ancestors, is to tell you that the world is not about shutting yourself away and staying home in the comforts of home. Any great heroic story from, Frodo Baggins or Bilbo Baggins in The Lord of the Rings was one of my favorite examples, or Luke Skywalker, or any of these heroes that men admire, men and women admire, they grew by leaving the comforts of home and accepting the challenge and the scariness and doing it anyway, feeling the fear and going out and going on adventures anyway.
Right, so because you can't be brave if you're not afraid. Otherwise, it's just a walk in the park.
Exactly. We don't value things that are easy in life.
Right.
We value things much more if they're difficult and they're challenging, and we have satisfaction of overcoming our fears. Absolutely.
Interesting. Very, very interesting. This is Happily Ever After is just the beginning on webtalkradio.net. I'm Leslie Dories, and I'm talking with writer and speaker Anthony Simeone about how men could redefine the role that they want to play in life. And Anthony is a writer, speaker, and heroism advocate, which we're going to get to in a minute. And if this is something that you're confused about, or if you're ready to take action, I invite you to learn about the Hero Husband Project. You can check it out at the website or the Facebook page, and the website is www.theherohusbandproject.com. Pretty simple, no spaces, just that. So now I want to get back to this conversation about masculinity, about what's a real man. And Anthony, you make an important point that the alternative to the traditional stoic man isn't a blubbering milquetoast, which it's like, I love it. It's like, well, if it's not this, it has to be that. And you make the point, no. So how would you describe a healthier, more attractive alternative?
Yeah, our culture really is obsessed with extremes. So it's those that argue for the alpha male stereotype are pushing a fallacy that men who express vulnerability with their emotions, who talk about their emotions freely, who ask for help with depression or loneliness, those men are weak. So they can't handle real life, so to speak, or they have to man up or grow a pair. So that the strict expectations of behavior enforced by that mentality are putting a lot of stress and pressure on the male psyche. And like I said, we're seeing the results in all the well-being issues men are having. So we need a less extreme and definition of humanity, men and masculinity. We need to have a less extreme view of masculinity and more nuance and subtlety and a balanced man. So we need what I call the heroic man. There's nuance here. Well, the heroic man or heroic masculinity is basically a service-based mindset. So this is my alternative to toxic masculinity and to the alpha male culture. Okay. So what we need is this service-based mentality, a hero mentality, where you see the world as a place that needs you to be empathetic while you're living your life. So the hero in any great story was someone who went on a journey, maybe initially to either help themselves or help the world, but as they went to and through this heroic journey with all the obstacles and the challenges and the monsters they had to overcome, either if they started out for selfish reasons, they saw that they really were helping the world as well, or they needed to help the world. Or if they started out just with selflessness in mind, they realized that they have to work on themselves as well, or they're no good to anyone. So it's this balanced path, this middle path between compassion for the self and compassion for the world, because I think a lot of men are taught that it's a dog-eat-dog world. I know I was as a kid. My dad told me it's a dog-eat-dog world. Everyone's out to get you. Don't trust anyone. So that's part of that mystique, the illusion of the world from the alpha male perspective, is that all other men are the enemy. And we therefore can't build any community. We don't reach out to other people. So many men are taught to be self-serving because they treat life like we're taught life is sort of a war zone, and that other men are just the enemy trying to take our stuff. Women are just looking for the best genetic breeding partner. And so men and women in that worldview are stripped of their humanity. Women are just looking for the best genetics, and men are there to take the women away from you or the job away from you. So that's the issue. So we need a middle path.
Well, and it's really interesting because as you were talking, what came to mind to me was football. And it's not just football, it would be any kind of team sport, because when you talk to people who've played team sports, they talk, or in the military, or, they talk about the connection that they have with their teammates. Now, granted, it can turn into a toxic area where it's like the other team is the enemy, but somehow I think, again, that's a safe place for men to connect really. Because that's one of the times, you see after a big sporting event or whatever, the team, the guys, who lost maybe crying, and nobody looks at these, like a 6'4", 300-pound guy. It's like, what's the matter with you? Because they get it. So is that a better? Better may not be the right word, but is that a healthier viewpoint? Because they're getting coached, they're getting help, it seems like it might be a better environment in some ways.
Yeah, there's this fallacy also pushed by the alpha male stereotype community that, we want the new male to be weak and feminine and all these other things. We don't want that. Men should be able to be stoic at times. We want you to be strong, assertive, have determination, discipline, ambition. Competition is fine. It's when you take all these things to extremes. There's always too much of a good thing. So these aren't negative aspects in and of themselves of being a man. So teamwork, team sports, that's a good outlet when it's not toxic, when it's not taken to extremes of bullying and poor sportsmanship and things. So we want men to have all these things that are traditionally associated with men that are good things. But women too can be ambitious, strong, assertive, but they have their own issues when it comes to how they're viewed when it comes to that.
Sure.
So these should be human aspects. These are really human behaviors: determination, ambition, discipline, competitiveness. These are good things to have in moderation, just like every other aspect of being human. So, but all of these things need to be tempered with teamwork, compassion for yourself and others, and empathy for others. So if you take the empathy out of sports, say, out of football, and it just becomes smash mouth football and just destroying the enemy, that's when the spirit of good, healthy competition and, striving to be better becomes toxic, when you strip out, compassion and care for the other people, and they become competitor. They move from competitor to enemy. And I think that's what the alpha male toxic sick mentality is that men have seeing each other as enemies versus, hey, we're going to measure ourselves against each other. Fair is fair. We'll see who comes out on top. And if I lose, that just means I'm going to get better. I need to get better, and I'm going to keep striving. Rather than you beat me, how dare you, my masculinity is brittle, now I need to destroy you.
Right, now I have to come after you.
Right. So it's the nuance of the missing element is compassion and human dignity, seeing dignity and respect for human life and other people, and having empathy for other people that is lost in the shuffle sometimes with this alpha male rhetoric that's really toxic.
Right. And I do think, and we're talking about that women have some of these qualities, the wanting to strive and succeed and what are considered male qualities, which is why my personal preference is not putting them in terms of masculine and feminine qualities, which is what a lot of people do, but going back to Jung and the anima and the animus qualities, which we all have. Now some of us have more of one than the other, or easier to access some than the other, and I think that's where the traditional, testosterone, estrogen come into play. But again, that's, not all men, not all women. That's very generalized. That this particular individual could be this way, and this other particular individual can be another way, just regardless of what their gender is. But this is. I think that this is a really important movement because, yes, I think it started with the women's movement where, women basically go, okay, I've had enough. I'm not man's property, blah, blah, blah. It's like, and we had to go a little bit extreme that way. And I know I know feminism has become a dirty word even among women. But again, I think it's what you're talking about, going to the extreme. But I think in that process, we're actually now freeing up men. So we're basically freeing up people to embrace all of themselves. Is that kind of where you think we're going?
Yeah, I think change comes. I think human beings we're paradoxical creatures. We want comfort, but we also get bored. We want novelty. So change sometimes often has to come with a lot of flare-up and discord and anger and pushback and revolution. So I think that, yes, I think women had their revolution, and I think that they're still going through that, and they're pushing and finding their place, and I think this is great. And I think men are lagging behind in having their own shake-up, and I think we're moving towards a shake-up, a titanic shift for men, and I'd like to help drive that forward. I know a lot of people, a lot of other men who are my colleagues and who are in this mindset of heroism and the heroic man, and especially at websites like the Good Men Project, where I'm a columnist. There's a community that is trying to push this new narrative of what it means to be a man and exploring masculinity and getting us out of this man box where it's just being a man is just X and just this.
Right.
And moving us and giving us a rainbow of human diversity and letting us be human versus just an alpha male wolf stereotype. So I think that there's definitely value, and I think that the upheavals and things like the incels and MGTOW and men's rights movements, I think those are sort of an illness, a part of the sickness of what it means to be a man right now in some cases, but we're moving towards wellness rather than an illness mindset for men, and I think that it's very exciting.
So is this what you're talking about? Because you developed something called Live the Hero concept. So what is this, and how does this fit into this idea we're talking about becoming a complete person?
Well, Live the Hero is what I would call a life philosophy that I created to tap into the power of the hero's journey. Mm-hmm. The hero's journey cycle, the heroic cycle created by mythologist Joseph Campbell, is gaining popularity lately in pop culture, and people see it as a magic formula for creating engaging storylines for films and TV shows.
Right.
But the reason it's so engaging is because it taps into the journey we all take through life as human beings, and the ancients developed heroic figures, from Hercules and all in the Greek mythology, and we're still creating heroes, like with Superman and modern superheroes. Uh-huh. We want these figures to strive towards, these ideals to strive towards, to give us something to realize that it's okay, we all have struggles, and we can either give up or rise up and overcome. That's what heroic figures have always done to inspire us. So I really created Live the Hero initially for myself. It was really during a pretty dark time in my life. I struggled with mental health issues, and I fell back on my interest in the humanities and thought, hey, this hero's journey is a framework. It's a tool I can use mindfully, actively, as a reminder that I can overcome my issues. So it's not just some fun, that tells a great story. It tells a great story because it speaks, it resonates to our daily struggles.
Right.
And I figured if this could help me, it could help other people.
Right. And that's why these stories exist. I mean, you were mentioning Star Wars and Luke Skywalker, and to me, one of the absolute characters is the Han Solo character, because he is the prototypical alpha male, in it for myself, kind of swaggering, guy, and then and of course, because we're familiar with the hero's journey, we know he's going to come back at the end, and in what was the original first movie, I don't know what it's called now, and come back and help, because he's connected with these people, and they've brought him the empathy and the humanity.
Yeah, so he's sort of the journey of the anti-hero, mm-hmm. or the reluctant hero, which is also an archetype. So, yeah, the anti-hero can start out as just self-serving, but then they grow as a human being as they come and they go out into the world, and they see the world is more than just me. The world is other people. I need to help. So it's when we fight that instinct to help other people that we all have. It's unnatural. So that's why Han Solo grows and changes and realizes, life is more than just about me. It's about helping others as well, and ironically, you help others, you make the world around you better. So it really helps you in the end to make a better world, because then the better world won't come banging down your door and coming after you in the end, if things fall apart.
Well, and I think men have been being allowed to move towards that, slowly. I mean, it just, all you have to do is think about, back in when I was born, and I'm not going to tell you how many years ago that was, men weren't allowed in the delivery room. They had to go sit out in the waiting room. And now, men are there, and they're cutting the umbilical cord, and they're staying home with their kids, and, they're being given permission in some areas of their lives. And, of course, men have always cared about their kids. This is not anything new. I mean, it's not like, suddenly men have found their sensitive side. It's like, no, it's always been there, but and you're talking about in the hero's journeys, you see these in all the great movies or the great stories, and it's not new. I think it's just been hidden for so long.
Yeah, it's been hidden under just arbitrary kind of, this is, someone along the way decided to make some decisions about how men and women should be, and kind of had its roots in just our biology. There are biological differences between men and women. Biologically, men are less nurturing than women. But if a society takes that to an extreme and says, well, this means men shouldn't be in the delivery room, that birth is just the realm of women, and men just go sit and smoke the cigar at the end of the process. It's these arbitrary human society decisions that we made, maybe based off of just our expressions of our biology, that they took to these artificial levels. But I mean, disciplines like positive psychology are now proving scientifically what human beings have always intuitively known and expressed in our mythologies. You know, we need to take an active, dynamic approach to life. We must make an effort in our daily lives to give back to the world while we work to improve ourselves, and that's what mythological heroes do. I mean, so living well takes work, and that's what the hero's journey tells us. Yes, there's some effort, and people don't want to hear that, but anything worthwhile takes effort in life. We don't value things that come too easily, like I said earlier.
Yeah.
You know, if we coast through life believing we're not in control of how we react to our world, or that our emotions or behaviors are beyond our control, we give away our autonomy and our agency in life, and that makes us miserable. And I think men are, you know, we're feeling like we don't have a choice in life. We have no autonomy or agency in our life. So we're just like, I need to be this way or else. And I think that we're experiencing, some upheavals because we've been living under that authoritarian alpha male regime for so long, and there's no wonder that it's cracking, that edifice is cracking under its own weight.
Well, and I think, you know, both of us agree that that's, even though it is kind of creating some upheaval, all in all, that's probably a good thing. It's certainly definitely healthier for the men who can see the advantages in it. So can you tell those men and anybody else who'd be interested where they can find out more about you and about Live the Hero concept and, you know, this way of embracing the hero's journey?
Well, you can go to livethehero.com. You can also go to anthonysimeone.com, but if you go to livethehero.com or Google that, it should take you to my website. So there's a lot of links to my articles. If you sign up to subscribe to my website, you'll get like a 30-day kind of change your habits to become more heroic, guidelines, sort of a primer. There's a manifesto on there you can read. So if you sign up, you get all that free content, and then you'll be signed up for the updates from my blog. Also, check out my column called The Heroic Man on Good Men Project. The Good Men Project is a great website, great resource for men who feel like that masculinity is changing, and they want to know what people are thinking about it and some guidance. So I have a column there that people can read as well, like I said, The Heroic Man. So what I would say is start with livethehero.com, and you'll have links to the Good Men Project articles that I write and other resources there. So, and if anyone wants to reach out to me, I'm available. Contact me through my website. Yep.
Well, terrific, because being a hero doesn't mean that you have to go out and slay dragons or, like we were talking about earlier, being, you know, the superhero and saving the world from an evil being. Sometimes being a hero just means having the courage to feel what you feel and not being afraid of it. And I'm going to tell you, it's freeing. It is wonderful. It allows you to be the person that you were meant to be. And by the way, everybody in your life, well, not everybody, there are going to be some people who might not want you to do that, but it isn't about those people. It's about you and the ones that you truly care about. And so hopefully this was an informative show, and I hope you'll keep listening and learning about how to be a better person, a better partner. And until next week, stay loving.